Good evening. I'm the Maven of the Eventide, and did you know they write books about vampires? So I feel like I just made one of these videos, but guess what happened between then and now? The Christmas holidays. Yes, and the major gift-giving holidays are when I apparently acquire a lot of vampire books. So I have some new stuff from my vampire library that I want to share with you. Some of it were Christmas gifts. Some of them were books sent to me by you when I told you last time that if you wished to send me vampire books, that was in your power. It still is, if you still want to. This is Nice Girls Don't Have Fangs by Molly Harper. She's a librarian with a really long shelf life. I had never heard of this book before, but the person who sent it to me says it's one of their favorites, so I am very curious. Thank you so much for sending this to me. Her relationship with her sexy, mercurial vampire sire keeps running hot and cold, and if all that wasn't enough, it looks like someone in Half Moon Hollow is trying to frame her for a series of vampire murders. What's a nice undead girl to do? Crimson Kiss by Trisha Baker, which I had also not heard of this book before, even though it's an older book. All I think about when I hear Crimson Kiss is that song from Lestat the Musical. But this book came out before Lestat the Musical, so, you know, maybe Elton John was inspired by it. It's about a vampire who is a psychologist who specializes in treating victims of abusive relationships, particularly women and children. Intriguing. This is The Silver Kiss, which a friend of mine gave me by Annette Curtis Kloss, and it's a young adult novel. She described it to me as kind of a proto-Twilight, so teenage vampire romance, apparently. It was written in 1990, so it's been around for a while, but it was not one I was familiar with. Simon is one of the undead, a vampire seeking revenge for the gruesome death of his mother 300 years ago. Does Simon dare ask Zoe to help free him from this lifeless chase and its intolerable solitude? Yes. Yes, I suspect he does. So we've got the Crimson Kiss and the Silver Kiss. We're just collecting a whole rainbow of vampire kisses. Well, speaking of vampire kisses, this is Vampire Kisses, which is a collection of 3 young adult novels into kind of an omnibus edition. It's got the first Vampire Kisses 2, Kissing Coffins, and 3, Vampireville. And I had actually checked this book out from the library a few years ago, and I read the first one in it, but I didn't read the rest of it. So thank you to the person who sent this for me. Now I can keep reading about this really weird baby goth character who's obsessed with vampires and then just gets lucky enough to meet one. These 3 books were given to me by the same fabulous friend who was clearing out her library, and she's like, hey, you want my old vampire books? Yes, yes I do. The answer is always yes. It's another copy of the Vampire Lestat, and this one's almost as beat up as mine, but it never hurts to have too many copies because sometimes people haven't read it, and you have to let them borrow it and, you know, remedy these situations because the Vampire Lestat is the most important vampire. Also, a copy of Interview with the Vampire. It's a cover that I don't own already. Very cool. And this is a copy of Lasher, which is not a vampire book. It is a witch book, but it's also written by Anne Rice, and it was included, so I am very happy to have it. I only have this in hardback, so it's nice to have a handy paperback copy. You never know when you'll need one. And in Anne Rice's vampire mythos, the witches and the spirit Lasher in this book are all connected to vampires. They're all kind of the same demon spirit things that started vampires in the first place. So, you know, it's tangentially related, and there is characters in here that show up in the vampire books later. I, Vampire, and its sequel, The Vampire Papers, sent to me by the same wonderful person. Thank you. Women are my weakness. Or to be more accurate, I should say they are my greatest weakness, for I have many: travel, books, classical music, art, excellent wine, and formerly cocaine. I admit these things with a sense of guilt. I am, as my friend from Vienna says, a man with a man's contradictions. I'm neither good nor bad, neither angel nor devil. I'm a man. I'm a vampire. That's almost an exact quote from Phantom of the Opera. Just replace I am a vampire with I am Eric. So I don't know if that's coincidence or if this Michael Rumsky in his seminal I, Vampire was somehow inspired by Phantom of the Opera, that would be awesome. It's from 1990, so again, another 30-year-old classic. Can you believe things from 1990s are 30-year-old classics now? This is a really cool pamphlet. Bram Stoker in the North Inner City, Dublin. It's like a tourist guide about Bram Stoker and anything vampire related, that if you're going to Dublin, that you could use this tourist guide and, learn some local history. And it was sent to me by the artist who drew these pictures and was part of making this book come into existence all the way from Ireland. Thank you so much. It's so cool. This book is one that's been on my vampire wish list for a while, and I got it as a Christmas gift. Thank you. Growing Up with Vampires, Essays on the Undead in Children's Media. I haven't read any of it yet, and I kind of wish I had, because I just did a video about vampires in children's media on the Cirque du Freak books. Maybe you've heard of them. You should watch that video. Some vampire nonfiction to add a little highbrow culture to your vampire library. The Ultimate Dracula, New Stories by some of the world's leading authors. It's a short story collection, and it has a lot of the same short stories you find in a lot of vampire short story collections, but also some new ones I haven't heard of. Came out in 1991. The introduction is by Leonard Woolf, that fabulous annotator of all things Gothic. I have his annotated Dracula and his annotated Phantom of the Opera. A couple first edition hardback copies of Anne Rice books. This is The Vampire Armand, which is like the 6th book in the series. And this is Blood Canticle, which comes after Blackwood Farm, which I had acquired last video we made. And actually, I think this completes my hardback first edition set, except for some of her newest books, which I don't have yet. But, all the old ones, I'm caught up. I found these at the used bookstore that I like to go to. They were having a buy 5, get 5 free sale. And this was on the clearance rack, only $4, where Armand belongs. Also from that same book sale, the first 3 books in the Blue Bloods series. Blue Bloods, Masquerade, and Revelations. And I read all these on ebook, but I never owned them, so I'd always wanted to get hard copies. There's more than 3 books in this series. These are the only 3 that I've actually read, and they did have the others in the series, but not in this format, and I like my sets to match, so I'm going to wait and go back to the used bookstore in a couple months and see if maybe they've acquired something that would match my matching set. The Blue Bloods series is a young adult series. It came out not too far away from when Twilight came out, so even though it wasn't one of those books I was trying to write on Twilight's coattails, it definitely got the Twilight bump, and it got really popular for a while, and Melissa De La Cruz has done some really cool stuff with vampires. In these books, the vampires are angels reincarnated, and they get reincarnated as vampires like every generation or so, but they don't really know what angel they are. They have to refine their soulmates and stuff, so it's really intriguing. And they're all really rich and fancy Manhattan upper crust, so they're very aesthetically led books if you like fancy vampires. This is new. It's the Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles in Alphabetary, compiled and written by Beckett. Beckett used to be Anne Rice's personal assistant. He stopped being her personal assistant recently, and this was the last thing he did with her. And it's just kind of like a giant wiki for all the characters and things in all of her vampire books and related series. And I've flipped through it, and I've already noticed some mistakes. I feel like I should have written this book. I should be Anne Rice's personal assistant. Is she hiring? It's still really cool. Instead of having to go scroll through the internet and read all the conflicting fan war opinions, you just got the basic facts right here in a book. And it's got some neat illustrations. Not really any illustrations of the characters, which I was kind of disappointed by. More just scenery, but they're pretty. The format of the book is nice too. I like the font, I like the page layout. To complete my Anne Rice collection, thank you for sending this to me. The Lost Boys comic graphic novel. This came out in 2017 when there was kind of like a Lost Boys revival. That was pretty cool. This called Lost and Found, and it's just the Frog Brothers doing their vampire hunting thing. I think it's supposed to be like a sequel. I haven't read it yet. The art's really cool. Thank you for sending this to me. This is Blood Taken by Nathan Baird, who sent it to me. Thank you. Wings of Blood, Book 1. Anastasia's life hangs in the balance as rival vampire bloodlines and organized crime fight for their place in the world. Far too young, she is about to unknowingly be sucked into the world which threatens to destroy her in its wake. As lingering shadows lurk at the edge of annihilation, all hope of a bright future seems lost. Her mother weeps, knowing the light in Anastasia's eyes is beginning to fade. Secrets long kept will be exposed and lives will be forever changed as dominions collide. I also have the sequel, Blood Rising Book 2. Blood and pain have dominated Moda's world since before she was changed, over 6,000 years ago. In less than a week, the mists of death will creep into her life as she is distracted from her protection of Anastasia by her responsibility as an elder and the hope of a new ally. This same author also sent me this book called The Dragon's Reign, the complete trilogy. And these books are about dragons. I don't know if there's any vampires in these dragon books, but they're by the same author who wrote these vampire books, so I will keep them together. This is a Bram Stoker's Dracula coloring book, and it is so cool. It tells the whole story of Dracula and then has the pages that you can color in. No, I have not colored in it yet. No, I don't know that I will, but it's so pretty. This is Lives of Elia by Tara Van Flower and Danielle Serra. And it's a book, but it's formatted in kind of a pamphlet way. And it's got really cool illustrations. You could see, I don't know, is it too shiny? There you go. You could see that. Let me teach you, Elia. Let me teach you how to be what you are. What am I? Have the gods cursed me? You are a god. For most, immortal is just a word, a description, a concept that defies all rational explanation. Born and reborn in the era of Christ, Elia knows all too well what immortal really means. Journey with her across the aeons in her truly eternal quest to find love, solace, or even simple peace with the world and the nature of what she has become. Neither a graphic novel nor simply a story with pictures, but an artistic hybrid somewhere between the two. Also, these two books by the same author, Tara Van Flower, Violent Violet, part 1 of the Violet series, and Crushed Violet. There's no summary on the back of these books, so I can't tell you what they're about. The first one came out in 2014. Oh, there's a playlist. Pretty covers. Last stack. The Moth Diaries. I have never actually read this book. My friend gave it to me for Christmas. Thank you. I've seen the movie, which I talked about a long time ago on this channel. I think it was one of my first videos. But that movie was based on a book, and this is that book written in diary format. It came out in the early 2000s, and it's very Carmilla inspired. It's about girls at boarding school with like sexy lesbians and stuff. Or is it? Is it all in her mind? Books 2 and 3 in Christopher Moore's Vampire Trilogy. I did a review recently on the first book in this trilogy, and now I have the next two. Bite Me, a love story. You Suck, a love story. And I had actually read these a long time ago on ebook, but I never owned them. So I have a wish list on Amazon that's literally titled Books I've Already Read but Wish I Owned. And someone sent me these off my wish list, so thank you so much. My vampire library will soon be complete. No, I'm just kidding. It'll never be complete. But it's getting more full and more well-rounded. Some vampire humor. If you haven't read any of Christopher Moore's books, his vampire ones are a good place to start. The first one is one of his oldest books, so it's very at the beginning of his writing style. And then these are much more recent, so you can kind of see how his writing evolved just from this trilogy alone. The Shambling Guide to New York City by Mur Lafferty and the sequel, The Ghost Train to New Orleans. These were sent to me anonymously. I don't know who sent them. I thought I knew who might have sent them, and I asked that person if they sent it, but they didn't answer, so I still don't know who sent them. If you want me to know that you sent these to me, let me know. Otherwise, just thank you for the anonymous gifts. If you're not familiar with Mur Lafferty's Shambling Guide, the premise is that well, I'll just read it to you. Zoe Norris is looking for a fresh start in New York City. She's found a seemingly perfect position as a travel book editor, but there's one thing holding her back. Being human. I mean, come on, isn't that the worst? Zoe isn't going to let anyone, not even her blood-drinking boss or her death goddess co-worker, put her off from delving deep into the monster underworld. But her job, not to mention her life, might be in peril when the line between monster and human starts to crumble, with Zoe right in the middle. So, urban fantasy. I have read some of Mur Lafferty's sci-fi before, and I really enjoyed it, but I haven't read anything of hers involving vampires, so I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you. This is Chibi Vampire. It's a manga. It's Japanese, but it's been translated into English, and this I picked up from a taken leave table that was at the hospital, the children's hospital, where my son was staying. You may have heard me explain before in my last Let's Play video that my son was hospitalized right before Christmas. Well, he was hospitalized again last week. And I picked up this book so we could kind of look at it together while he was there. And it seems really cute. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but when I tweeted a picture of my stack of books, everyone who saw this in the stack was like, oh my god, Chibi Vampire. So apparently it's quite beloved, so I'm looking forward to it. I don't read enough manga, so it'll be nice to vary my reading material as long as there's vampires. I've been told there's also an anime series about this, which might interest me even more than this manga, so I might be checking that out. Is it any good? The Rhesus Chart by Charles Stross. Another gift. Thank you very much. London can drain the life out of you. Bob Howard is an intelligence agent at the top secret government agency known as the Laundry. When occult powers threaten the realm, they'll be there to clean up the mess and deal with the witnesses. There's one threat that the Laundry has never come across in its many decades, and that's vampires. But when a team of investment bankers discovers an arcane algorithm that leaves them fearing daylight and craving O positive, someone doesn't want the Laundry to know, and Bob gets caught right in the middle. This is actually the 5th book in the series about the Laundry and their occult problems that they solve, but it's the only one that's actually about vampires, so this is the one that I was gifted, and I'm led to believe I don't need to read the first 4, that I could just read this. I'm used to jumping into mystery series in the middle, so it shouldn't be a problem. Gotta get right to the vampires. And the same person sent me this, Blind Sight, which was a Hugo Award finalist by Peter Watts, and reading the back, you would never think that there were vampires even in this book, but I have been told that there are. They're not a major part, but they're there, and that's all that matters to me. And it was blurred by Charles Stross, the author of The Rhesus Chart, so, you know, a science fiction novel of burning, dark intensity. I love science fiction, especially when there's vampires. Are they space vampires? I'll have to find out. The Beautiful by Renee Adia. This book is brand new. It just came out and it showed up at my P.O. box, so thank you so much to the person who sent it to me. I love this cover design. In 1872, New Orleans is a city ruled by the dead, but to 17-year-old Céline Rousseau, New Orleans is a safe haven after she's forced to flee her life as a dressmaker in Paris. Taken in by the Sisters of the Ursuline Convent in the middle of the carnival season, Céline is quickly enraptured by the vibrant city, from its music to its fancy soirees and even its danger. She becomes embroiled in the city's glitzy underworld known as Le Coeur de Lion after catching the eye of the group's enigmatic leader, Sébastien Saint-Germain. Saint-Germain. Huh, that doesn't sound familiar at all. When the body of one of the girls from the convent is found in Sebastian's own lair, the second dead girl to turn up in recent weeks, Céline battles her attraction to Sebastian and suspicions about his guilt along with the shame of her own horrible secret. After a third murder, New Orleans becomes gripped by the terror of a serial killer on the loose, one who has now set Céline in his sights. As the murderer stalks her, Céline finally takes matters into her own hands, only to find herself caught in the midst of an age-old feud between the darkest creatures of the night, where the price of forbidden love is her life. At once a sultry romance and a decadent, thrilling mystery, master storyteller Renee Adia embarks on her most potent fantasy series yet. Oh, it's gonna be a series. Cool. Yeah, someone was talking to me about this book, and I don't know if it's the person who sent it to me or it was someone else entirely. They're like, this book is proof that vampires are coming back to YA, and it may be. It may be. We shall see. I like that it's a historical novel. I love historical fiction, especially, you know, for children, because that makes children feel fancy and educated, and I loved reading stuff like that when I was a teenager. Lastly, in the book pile, By Blood We Live. Vampire stories by these guys and many others, edited by John Joseph Adams, another anthology of vampire stories. So, you know, sometimes when you want a vampire, but only a little bit of a vampire, because, you know, you got things to do. Vampire short stories. Always keep them on your shelf. These little guys are little miniatures that have been painted by an artist who sent them to me. And this one especially is cool because he painted her to look like Vampirella. You know, Vampirella. So thank you so much. They're so cute. They sit right here next to my Grim Reaper skull and my Elvira Funko Pop. Lastly, I got some vampire movies on Blu-ray. Yeah, I finally upgraded to Blu-ray. This is Hotel Transylvania 3. Thank you. I will enjoy watching this with my fledgling spawn. This is the one where Dracula goes on a cruise. Zany Dracula hijinks. Or at least so the trailer would have me believe. The Discovery of Witches series based on the books which I had received the last time I made a video. So now I have the full series of books and the full series of the show, which I want to read the first book before I watch this because I've been told that this series or the season is based on the first book. So I want to make sure I do it properly. So I'm not going to watch this yet. Got to read the book first. And then this one, which I bought for myself, this is Dario Argento's Dracula 3D, which didn't come out that long ago. It was 2012. Wow, 2012 was it doesn't feel like that long ago. So Dario Argento made what is the worst version of Phantom of the Opera in existence. So I'm thinking his version of Dracula is going to probably be at least enjoyably terrible. But, you know, Dario Argento has made some great films. He did not understand Phantom. So if he couldn't understand Phantom, can he understand Dracula? We shall see. I've only seen clips of this, which is all that's available to find online without actually physically owning the Blu-ray. So now I own it. I don't usually buy physical copies of movies because it's easier for me to work with digital files. So I'll usually just buy the file download off Amazon instead. But you can't do that with this one. I had to get the real thing, so now it's mine. Lucky me. If it's going to be anything like Phantom of the Opera, Asia Argento plays Lucy in this, and she was Christine in Phantom, so that'll be fun. Thank you for joining me in my Vampire Library expansion. This is the part where I remind you that I wrote a vampire book. Actually, I wrote 3 vampire books, but the only one you can get so far is this one, The Company of Death. This is the paperback. It's also an audio book. You can get the audio online if you don't like physical media, because who does? From Audible, and also not from Audible. If you go to Tantor, who is the company that produced the audiobook, you just go to their website and then you don't have to support Amazon. The paperback and hardback copy you can buy at any online bookseller too. You don't have to support Amazon. The only thing you have to get from Amazon is the Kindle, if that's what you want. I know you've heard me talk to you about it before, but I'm going to remind you again, just in case you are one of those people that was like, oh, her book sounds cool. I'm going to have to get that someday. And then you forgot. So I'm reminding you, consider this your reminder. And if somehow you've never heard me talk about this book, The Company of Death is a book about what would happen to the Grim Reaper during the zombie/vampire apocalypse if everyone in the world was undying instead of dying. What would the Grim Reaper do? Well, read the book and find out. Since I know you're going to ask, the second book in the series, called The Touch of Death, is coming out later this year, or because it's 2020 already. I don't have an exact date yet, but as soon as I do, I will let you know. Don't worry, I will let you know. And yes, there will be an audiobook of that as well. And then the third book in this series, year after that, don't worry, they're coming. Publishing is a very slow business, but they're coming, I promise. If you enjoy hearing me talk about vampires, please watch my vampire reviews where I actually critically discuss the things I read in these books or watch in the movies or the TV or wherever the vampires may be. And if you'd like to help me make these videos, consider supporting me on Patreon. This video is brought to you by my patrons on Patreon. It would not exist if not for them. So thank you so much. You guys are the best. Please leave me comments. Let me know about any other vampire books that you think I should look into and add to my wish list. A lot of people will recommend things that I've already talked about in other videos like this, so I put the playlist for this video in the cards if you want to watch those videos and see, oh wait, does she have Lost Souls? No, she doesn't. I can recommend that. Does she have all these other vampire books? Yes, I do. I probably do. If you would like to send me vampire books, the address is in the description. Otherwise, just thank you for watching. leave me likes and comments and subscribe. Love you. Good night.